This video, I'm going to be sharing with you 3 ways to heal your painful past and raise your vibration. These are 3 very different ways of going about it, all of 3 which can work in a very powerful way. Welcome back to another video. My name is Aaron and I help people expand their consciousness. Now in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you 3 of the most powerful ways to heal your painful past and to raise your vibration. These are things that I've applied in my own life, some of them in different categories. Maybe one of these I'm going to share with you I used back in 2012-13 when I went through my initial spiritual awakening. 1 or 2 of the other ones I found sooner than or more recent, and I've used it for other things as well. So understand as well that right now on the planet, it's a time where a lot of things you may feel are coming up. I know that I see it in myself. I see things coming up from my past, even stuff that I thought that I already dealt with, like certain childhood memories and stuff like that. It's coming up to the forefront so that I can become aware of it, and then I can use one of these processes and then let them go. And I notice it in so many other people as well, whether it's people that reach out to me saying, why is it, I just read a comment in one of my DMs, it says, why does the awakening process feel like a emotional roller coaster? Or people wondering why these things are being brought up when they think that it's about raising the consciousness of the planet right now. The vibration is increasing, and the truth is the vibration is increasing. But part of the vibration increasing has to do with all of these suppressed memories that maybe we haven't dealt with coming up to the surface. Now, before I even get into sharing the 3 things I'm going to be sharing today, something I read last night in the book, The Law of One, which some of you may have heard me reference before, it talked about forgiveness of the self. It said that karma stops. We build up karma, which you can think of as inertia. When things happen, we build up this karma. And until we forgive the other or the self, so until we forgive the person that did something to us, or we forgive ourselves for something that happened as well, we keep that karma going. That's what we may drag into each experience we have, each different parts of our life. Maybe you find that you've had a certain type of relationship over and over and over again, or a similar thing happens at your job where something happens and then the same thing happens a little bit down the road as well. These are all patterns that just haven't been dealt with yet. Things that haven't got up to the surface, and also it's something that you just haven't maybe healed or forgiven yourself or someone else for doing something to you. So what Ross said in The Law of One is that it's about forgiveness of the other and forgiveness of the self. So then we see that it's about then healing. In a way, it heals our energy field when we do that, because if we remain angry towards someone else, then that remains in our energetic field, and then even though that someone else may leave, we'll find someone else to reflect back that same incongruency there. And I say this from experience because if you know my story, I had an ex-stepmom that was abusive, and then what happened is after she left my life at 15, I then had a girlfriend at the time who had very controlling type tendencies as well, very similar, very jealous, a lot of negative emotion. And then after I broke up with her, I then had a manager. I got transferred to a better department at where I worked, which was Nordstrom's in women's shoes. And then I got transferred to a better department with a manager that was almost the same as my ex-stepmom. Then I applied one of the techniques I'm sharing with you today, and within 2 weeks she got fired. And it was taking forever. No one could get her fired because she was so protected by upper management. But once I did this process, it's like she left my life. She was no longer relevant for what I needed to learn. So I say this from experience. This really does work. So forgiveness of the self as well and forgiveness of the other is the awareness that we are all connected. That's what the Law of One is all about. Healing is about integration. Healing is not about forgetting. It's not about forgetting. Healing is not about just switching the focus necessarily. It could be, but many times it's about integrating that and letting that become something that you then transform rather than trying to suppress it. That's why a lot of these memories are coming up right now as well, is so that we could deal with them. But the Law of One has to do with understanding that we are all connected. We are all one. Therefore, something you do to someone else, you do to another aspect of yourself. And in the same way, when you see that everyone is always doing the best they can with where they are at their level of consciousness, forgiveness becomes much easier. That's how I forgave my ex-stepmom. Because I realized that she was probably abused when she was a kid, and that's why she was playing out that pattern. It makes it easier. Doesn't make it right, doesn't mean like, oh, that should have happened, but it does make me understand more. When you understand, you then are able to forgive much easier. So, in general, right now on the planet, you may feel like a lot of things are getting brought up. The 3 things I share with you right now are 3 different ways to heal your painful past. Now, the first one is actually an ancient technique. It's been around for a long time. In India, I believe, is where it began. And it is called, has to do with completing the past. Completing the past. And completing the past, what it has to do with is, in the point in the past, what happened is something happened. And the moment something happened, it was repressed. It was in a way shoved down. And what we may have done is we may have put on a certain mask so that we could deal with it. We may have put on a certain front so we could deal with it. And when we did that, what happened was that got pushed down and then it wasn't dealt with. Now, what a lot of people do is they keep it suppressed. What some people may do is they may drink, they may smoke, they may do different things that kind of numb them from it. However, completing the past is about actually immersing yourself in the old memory of something that happened and then feeling it as it happened. So it's almost like you're bringing back that memory, living through it, and then letting it go and letting it in a way integrate and disintegrate. Now, this will sound very paradoxical to many people that are especially into the law of attraction. It was for me when I first read about it. Because I read about it and it was like, isn't that against the law of attraction? Like, aren't you going to manifest more bad things by doing that? And what I realized, and what it actually, there's a method to it. The idea is that you feel it now, complete it, it then served its purpose, and then you can let it go. And it literally disintegrates. And I've heard Eckhart Tolle talk about this before in The Pain Body as well. Eckhart Tolle, the author of The Power of Now, he talks about how when something comes up, you become aware of it, and you just get present with it. You accept it. That scale of consciousness that I share a lot, one of the higher vibrations is acceptance. Higher vibrations than all the negative emotions, at least. And when you accept the emotion, many times it transforms. So when you have this emotion come up and you feel as if you are in that experience, you're literally reliving it, you then are completing the past. It's no longer suppressed, and you accept it for what it is and you just become present with it, it will then disintegrate. I say this from experience because this is what I used to get through the pain of my ex-stepmom. I had to bring through certain memories that were pretty traumatic. And by doing so, I then felt the emotion as if it happened. It didn't feel good in the moment, but then what happened is it let go and it left my body, and I was able to really let go of that negative emotion. Now, I know it seems paradoxical, but it's been around for a long time. It's a very powerful process that many people have said works so powerfully. It's what helped me. And what I do is I have a free meditation that you can download or click on the link in the top description box below. Read the comments on that video. It's actually a YouTube video. Listen to it for 21 days. I think it'll change your life. What you do is you go through a process. You bring up some of the things of unworthiness, parts of your past. One of the biggest beliefs people have is that they're not worthy. And one of the things that was wired in when they were a kid was that they weren't worthy. They don't deserve to be themselves, or many different aspects of that. So in that meditation, what you do is you bring up the memories, you complete the past so you no longer have to repeat the past, and then in that meditation you get flooded with unconditional love and high vibration energy. It's a very powerful meditation. You can see the comments to see what's possible. So that's the first way. I'll remind you at the end as well if you want to continue to watch the video before you go over to that meditation. But that's one of the most powerful ways I found to complete the past or to heal the past. Now, the second one I want to share has to do with understanding this powerful idea that I've come to learn recently, and it's by applying it in my own life. And it has to do with understanding the story we tell ourselves about what happened in the past. The story we tell ourselves about who we are. The story we tell ourselves is something that remains on autopilot until we become aware of it. Now, we have a story about what people did to us. We have a story about what we did and what we should have done or shouldn't have done. This story is what causes that energetic momentum to continue to go in that direction. Now, when you look at your story and you become aware of it, you see it as something that is just on autopilot. Now, within that story, though, is a certain meaning. And in that meaning, that is the effect that we get out of it. Now, this was also something that I paired with the first technique that I applied to heal my painful past. Because I was looking at my ex-stepmom and all this stuff, and what I realized is that that pain of my past, the meaning I was giving it was that I wasn't worthy all of these things. I wasn't worthy. I have to really become someone in order to be worthy. I have to have this amazing discipline in order to get what I want, and all of these different aspects. But what I then realized is that the meaning I was giving that past situation was at the time in 2011 or 12 giving me such a negative effect. So what I did is I changed that meaning, but I also just became aware that that actually led me to a very powerful spiritual awakening. One of the biggest shifts in my life was my spiritual awakening. It was the biggest shift in my life was my spiritual awakening. I believe that the pain of my past led me to a spiritual awakening. I believe that many people listening to this video right now may have been through a lot of pain of their past, and that may have led to their spiritual awakening. So the meaning of the past isn't that you're not worthy and all of these things. The meaning of it was that it led you to a spiritual awakening. If you study a lot of Eastern philosophy, it has to do with suffering leads to spiritual growth. And in a way, that a lot of times is the case. There's many successful, even just in success in the Western world. When you look at success, many people are successful because they went through a deep level of scarcity or deep level of pain growing up, but they broke through it. They came out of it even stronger. They raised through like the phoenix out of the ashes, you see? Now, the meaning is what changed. So what I want to ask you to do is to look at your past and to look at the meaning you were giving your past. Because most of us that have been through a lot of pain are very strong souls that knew that we could get through it. I don't mean that to like hype up our egos and be like, yes, we're so strong. Everyone else that has things given to them, they are not strong. I am strong. They're all just asleep anyways. That's the spiritual ego. And the spiritual ego creeps up, especially after a spiritual awakening. It's like a phase. Then you become aware of it, and then you can let it go. But in the same way, understand that you may have been through a lot because that may have led you to a spiritual awakening. That helped you to wake up sooner because you're here right now. And a lot of other people wouldn't even click on a video like this because they'd be more interested in some gaming prank or some other type of channel. Nothing wrong with it. No judgment. Just saying. You wouldn't perceive of this if you weren't of the vibration of it. So first off, just know that the pain of your past may have led you to your spiritual awakening. And when you change that meaning, it changes everything. You realize that life does not happen to you, life happens for you. So you see, this is a very powerful thing that's changed my life in many ways. I've given a lot of different meanings to parts of my past, whether it's just that or whether it's, when I'm trying to sometimes force things to happen with my willpower. Like I'm going to take a lot of action. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. You don't always get that which you think you need, or you don't always get that which you want, but you always get that which you need. And sometimes what you need is a little more growth. And when you're growing, there'll be times that you're up, but then there'll be times that you're down. But the idea is that when you're down, it also gives you perspective so that you can desire and set the intention and get back up, to let go of what's not serving you. A lot of healing in general as well is this analogy that I've heard Abraham Hicks use before and that resonates with me. A bob on the ocean. It naturally bobs on the ocean. And just like that, negative emotion is the same way. Our vibration is naturally high, but think of the bob, us holding it down is that negative emotion. We're holding that negative emotion underneath the water. Now, in order to raise your vibration, or in order to get the bob to go back up on top of the ocean, What do you have to do? You don't have to try to do anything. You don't have to willpower it. All you have to do is let go of the resistance. And the moment you let go of holding that bob under the ocean, you naturally raise back up. And it works the same way with frequency. You let go of the lower vibration emotions of shame, fear, guilt, anger, jealousy. You become aware of them. You observe them. You accept them. And then you simply just choose to be. You just let them go. You naturally begin to raise up. And when you do that, then your vibration begins to raise. So it's much more simpler than we think. Now, the third way you can heal your past and raise your vibration, this is something that's a little more esoteric, but it has to do with what I call identity shifting. We could say it's called that. Now, in general, in this 3D reality, we have an identity that's our ego construct of this is who I think I am. I think that I'm Aaron Doughty. I share YouTube videos, and this is who I am. This is my 3D avatar. Now, at a deeper level, we are all connected. We are all eternal spiritual beings living temporary human experiences. Now, what happens is as we grow up, we think that this is who I am. I am my past. I am identifying with my past. I am identifying with things people said about me. We identify with this character that we develop, which is our ego. And what happens is that has a certain momentum. Now, what happens is when we become aware that every single moment we are a new version of us, every single moment, we can then break the attachment that we have to our past. We can then break the attachment to have the story we tell ourselves about who we are. Because neuroscience even shows that every time we take a memory out of the memory bank, we look at it, we then change it, and then we put it back into our memory bank. Which means by the time you remember something from your past 10 or 15 times, it's a completely different memory and it's a completely different past. So our perception of the past isn't even what we think it is. So when we start to notice that, what we can then begin to do is to let go of the illusory past by being aware that it is, in a certain form, an illusion, because our perception of it is so skewed. And then we can reassert that I am not the result of my past. I am who I choose to be in the present moment right now. Because a lot of times what will pull us back into a past is an identity. You can use this for easy things not as deep as like painful past. Maybe it is, but like smoking cigarettes, for example. When you're smoking cigarettes, you may have a certain way that you do it. You identify yourself as a smoker. If you identify yourself as a smoker, then it will be even harder for you to change out of that pattern because it's a part of your identity. But if you remember that you are who you choose to be right now, you then can be fresh in every moment, fresh in every moment, fresh in every moment, and you can stop to tell yourself the story that you are a smoker that's tied to some past. And realize that you are fresh every moment, and by doing that, you then reassert a new level of identity. You can then be the way that you prefer. And realize that on this fresh moment right now, you don't choose the past with all of that momentum of you being a smoker. Because as you change right now, you change your past. There are many different versions of your past. You perceive of the ones that you keep reasserting through your identity right now in the present moment. When you are in an excited state, it is easier for you to remember times of your past when you were also excited. If you were to get to such a positive state, and I kept asking about what it was like to be in this positive state and different times of your past in a positive state, and you did that for 5 minutes, and then I said, hey, can you remember a time when you were really, when something really bad happened? It would take you a minute to really think of something to get momentum with that because you'd have so much of the memories in your mind wired in a way to where you can only pull from similar parts of your past. So asking you something like that, it would be so far outside of what you are in the realm of thinking of. Well, in the same way, when you are in such a positive state, what you will find is that it's easier for you to remember things of your past of the positive that were in a similar state of that. But here's the key. Here's what I want to share with you. Instead, just decide that right now you are fresh. You are not the result of your past. You are who you choose to be right now. Right now is a new moment. Right now. Right now is a new moment. Right now. How often do you want to keep telling yourself the old story that is limiting you, that is making you feel pain. The story about the kind of people you attract into your life, the story about how people treat you, the story about how abundance doesn't come easily. That's a story. Every moment you can decide that this is a fresh moment and that you can tell yourself a new story. But our identity wants us to stay trailed with the identification of those past stories, because one of the things the ego loves is the ego loves to be right. But if you give off the payoff of being right, the ego gets an adrenaline off being right. If you ever won an argument and been like, oh yes, I was right, it's a little ego high. But the real power is in forgiveness and acceptance of the other person and their perspective, a surrender. So in the same way, what I'm encouraging you is to realize that right now is a new moment. Right now is a new moment. How often do you want to keep telling yourself your old story? Your story is creating your life. Your story about who you are, your story about how you relate to other people, your story about the kind of relationships you attract into your life. These are all stories you tell yourself that are tied into your beliefs and your identity. The key is then changing your beliefs and your identity. And the way that you change your identity is you become aware of it. It's not about changing out one identity and getting a better one. It's about becoming aware of the identity that you currently have and then letting go of what's not you. Because then you naturally are being authentic. You are being in the present moment. You are being in a high vibrational frequency. So everything I'm sharing with you right now, these 3 processes have completely transformed my life. I believe that right now on the planet, this clearing is happening. More and more people are becoming aware of it because it is a time of transformation. Either or any of these 3 are very powerful. Like I mentioned in the beginning, completing the past. The meditation for completing the past will be in the top of the description box. Listen to it for 21 days. It will change your energetic field, and I really believe it will change your life. Now remember the other 2, meaning, change the meaning you give things, and when you do that, you then start to use that energy in a much more powerful way. And then thirdly, multi-dimensional shifting while looking at your identity in a new way. And choosing to let go of what doesn't serve so that your bob can naturally raise up. So another thing as well is, in order to see the daily videos, you actually have to hit the notification gear. I have a lot more good stuff coming. I'm excited to share it with you. So go ahead and hit the notification bell if you haven't already, and you will be able to see the daily vids. That's the way YouTube does it now, is you actually have to hit that button to see the daily vids. So other than that, I hope you enjoyed this video. Also like this video if you liked it, and comment below anything you want to share. Maybe what processes do you use for healing and for completing your past? And as always, I'll see you in the next vid. Peace, much love, and namaste.